Hey guys, welcome back to another RASK Maths tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'll be talking about polar coordinates and what they are, how you can use them, and why they're useful. So, polar coordinates are just another way of representing coordinates, which just represent points on a graph. Now, usually you'll work in Cartesian coordinates, which have an x and a y direction, or x and y value. And what this looks like is you'll have an x-axis and a y-axis, right? So to plot a point in x and y Cartesian coordinates, you have to go along the x-axis by what the x is and go along the y or the vertical direction by the y, and that gives you your point. But obviously there's different other ways of representing points on this graph, and we don't just have to use this sort of vector notation. So polar coordinates, instead of using x and y, use r, which stands for radius, and theta, which is the angle which this line makes with the horizontal line. So when you're plotting in polar coordinates, there's not actually an x and y axis. We draw it, but it's not actually an x and y axis. It's just called the horizontal or baseline, and you can put arrows on, it doesn't really matter. So to plot a polar point, so let's just say we had this point, what we do is, first of all, you have to make an angle theta with this baseline, and then you have to go along a distance r. So let's just say r is over here, and I'll just label this distance r, like so. And this point is r theta. So it's just another way of representing the point here. This point, which might be over here in x and y, just another way of representing this point. And there's actually ways to convert between these two, so it's pretty easy to convert between polar and Cartesian equations, especially Cartesian points. But let's look at a few examples. So let's say we want to have the polar point, let's just have 1 and pi over 2. This is actually the same thing as 190 degrees, but usually when in polar, you work in radians because of where polar is generally used in Argand diagrams, and I'll talk about that later. So to plot this point, what we do is this is going to make an angle of pi over 2 or 90 degrees with this line, so that's going to create a right angle, and then we go along and until we have a length of 1, and this here, we just use the green, that there is our point. Okay, let's do one more. I don't want the same graph actually. Let's say plot point 1, and let's do minus pi over 3. And if you're working in degrees, actually let me do different r value. Let me do 2. So working in degrees, this is the same as minus 60 degrees. And same thing, a minus, you can actually take this mod 360, so this is the same thing as 300 degrees, because obviously once you go around 360 degrees, that's the same as going 0 degrees. But yeah, that's just going to be making a negative angle 60 with the line, and this isn't to scale, but I'll just put it somewhere here, like that. So that is 60 degrees there, and this is a distance of 2. Okay, there we go. So there's our point. Let me just use this one. Okay, now polar coordinates, they come like super useful and handy when you're dealing with Argand diagrams, where an Argand diagram is just a axis of real and imaginary lines, and it's used to plot complex numbers. So this is useful because complex numbers can actually be written in two forms. You can either have a plus bi, which is similar to Cartesian, where you go along a and up I in the I direction, so that's going to give you a plus bi, or just ab if you were doing it via Cartesian. And that's actually the same thing as, let's just say, r e to the I theta, where theta and r are the polar coordinates. So you might just go like this now instead, where that's theta and that's r. These are different ways of representing complex numbers, and the reason like we can represent those two numbers in the same way, the same number in two different ways is because of Euler's formula and all that. And yeah, the reason this is where polar coordinates are mainly used, just to sort of analyze these complex numbers. Anyways, thanks for watching, and that was polar coordinates and how to plot them. See you guys in a future tutorial. Bye.